Recording in progress. Sorry.
It being on or about 6:30. Let's bring this meeting of the regular meeting of the Easton Conservation Commission to order June 26, 2023. Please note that this meeting is being conducted remotely over Zoom, and attendance by board commission members will be counted for the quorum, and the meeting is being recorded for playback later time by you can. Just in order to establish quorum, let's do a roll call.
Benson present.
Osman present.
Spade, you're present.
Paul Fell's present. So seeing that we have a quorum, we're going to proceed. The first item up is 524 Depot Street. This is an application from the town of Easton for an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation. This is strictly to verify the wetland resource areas of ANRAD. Just for anybody who is on here wanting to hear more about the potential public works, public safety development, I am going to put a link into the Q&A box just so you could go and get additional information. This particular hearing is strictly discussion about wetland and the delineation of those wetland resources. So there's no conversation here about what's proposed on the property at some time in the future. In fact, we have nothing to do with that portion of it at this point, because we haven't seen any definitive plans. So I'm going to put a link in there for you if you want to see any additional information. If we get to the public comment period, and there are put it into the chat. Where is it? Chat. Okay.
Yeah, you're right. For a webinar, I don't know that we think the official setting is probably with the chat off.
Fair enough. Somebody asks a question, I'll post it. How's that?
Sounds good.
Just if we get to the public comment and we start getting questions about the project in general, I'm going to probably cut those questions off pretty quickly so we can stay on topic to the wetland resources. So, who's presenting for the applicant here?
So Rory, I'll just give a brief introduction. I'm Greg Joint with Castleton Associates. We're the architects who head the design team. With us tonight is Leah, who did the delineation for us through our surveyor. So Leah will give a brief overview, and if there are any questions, we're happy to take them. Leah? You're muted, Leah.
Leah, is it possible for you to turn your camera on as well?
Okay. I'm not sure I can get my camera here. This is like doing a weird thing. I need to tap this button to speak. So, okay, my name's Leah Basbanes. I'm with Basbanes Wetlands Consultant. I was hired through Chappell Engineering to do this, the delineations on the property. As you probably all know, this is a quite extensive wetland system throughout this property. It seems essentially you have two upland islands surrounded by wetlands. You have nearly every layer.
Do we have a plan so we can put up? Do we have the proposed ANRAD plan here?
Yeah, I got it.
That'd be great.
Greg, you got it?
Thank you.
Okay. Again, they probably told you I need to be very, very brief. I have 2 meetings going on right now at 6:30, of which I'm the vice chair of both boards. So they told me I could do a very quick meeting and skedaddle. So essentially, as I was saying, the site has every layer of jurisdiction under the State Wetlands Protection Act and your bylaw, with the exception of endangered species, it seems, including vegetated wetlands, isolated wetlands, streams, floodplain, riverfront, and land under water bodies, land subject to flooding. And as you know, all those apply to your bylaw as well, including the intermittent streams with the riverfront area. Took 19 different flagging series to delineate all of the wetlands that are on the property. There are 2 intermittent streams. One is defined by the C series and the second by the G series, which is the most, I guess that's southeast portion of the property, if I'm reading that map correctly. There are 4 identified vernal pools that are along the power line. And 1 isolated wetland, very small one, does not appear to be a vernal pool. And then the remaining areas throughout are bordering vegetated wetlands. The methodology used is what was established in your bylaw by the dominance of hydrophytes, wetlands indicated plant species with an indicative status of facultative or wetter, with the dominance of those at each layer of the canopy, shrub, woody vines, and the herbaceous layer, and a dominance among those 4 layers, creating the dominance for the wetlands plants. Essentially along that line is how the delineation was done. In places that were particularly more difficult, I did observe soils every now and then just to sort of check in using the state methodology, but 95% of the site was done using your Easton bylaw methodology. I don't know if I really have anything else to establish. Banks of the streams were done by the first observable break in slope or elevation. Both areas are very well defined. Bank, though in the C series bank, it's sort of an interesting little stream. It's not particularly long, and it sort of breaks up at some point along the way and then flows through a stone wall and then appears to go through a channel that looks like it was man-made at some point and then just sort of diffuses into a larger wetland system. The other G series stream is much more defined, much longer, and does continue off property. So I didn't chase that far, but it does go into the same wetland system as the C series. So other than that, unless anybody has any quick questions, hopefully I've satisfied that, but I really need to take off.
Thank you, Leah.
All right. Anything else?
No, I mean, I don't want to hold you up. I mean, there's probably, we'll probably continue on here and figure out where we're going to go from here.
Okay. Certainly happy. Any questions after the fact through email or whatever? If I'm assuming you're going to be continuing this, so I'll be happy to take care of any questions or concerns at that point.
Thank you, Leah.
All right. Well, thank you for indulging me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for making time.
Okay. Take care.
Greg, can we potentially sort of move out a little bit so we can give this perspective to where this sort of particular ANRAD is focused in?
Let me, and I can kind of just, this is Depot Street here as it runs west to east. This area here is the power line easement. So if you're familiar with Depot Street, if you're going west to east on Depot Street, there's a small clearing after you pass Whistle Stop and turn the bend a little bit. So there's a small clearing here. That is the small clearing you see from Depot Street, and then you get to the power line easement here and cross under. Most people are familiar with this when it was the Gill property. The Gill property kind of proper would be just past the property line, just past the power line easement. That helps. It is the northernmost part of the Gill property, which is about 150 acres or so.
So is the ANRAD specifically related to this one part of the property?
It is.
Jennifer, want to give us any comments?
Yeah, just a couple things. So this is the revised plan that we received today, so just need some time to go through it. There is some new flagging that was done recently, so I'll need to check those other flags, but the majority of the site, I have finished the wetland boundary, and I have to say it's a complicated site, and Leah did a really good job, so just a few other spots that I do have to check. Did you guys want to mention which river that is and how you came up with the floodplain?
That's
All right, so
the
that-
Black Brook.
Blackbrook.
And that was located with GIS, and that's also FEMA floodplain right there in the green.
Okay, and is that an A zone or an AE zone with an elevation?
I think it was an AE. I double check that though.
Okay. And you guys mentioned there are isolated wetlands. Can you point out those, please?
I
I
believe
think he was just referring to the one in the middle. No.
I believe it was this one, Jennifer.
Okay. I thought she said there were two of them. Is the one further south also isolated?
So there's vernal pool here, and then there's a small portion that looks like it's.
Okay, it's within the bordering vegetated wetland.
I think so, yeah.
And the isolated wetland, do you have the square footage of that? Or is that something you can provide later?
I'm sure we can provide it, yeah.
Okay. Did we resolve the map and parcel number from the permit application?
Do you know if we resolved that?
Well, do you remember? So it's asked for the parcel number, and I'm asked for the assessor map number. I gave, and it falls on all those assessor maps.
I think that's because it is a single parcel, Jennifer, that spans multiple maps, so we can handle it any way you'd like us to.
Okay. All right, that's actually, those are all the comments I had. Just need that final check of the new flagging that was provided and these revised plans. Thank you.
So Jennifer, you've already spent time out on this site, right? Multiple times, I assume.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember some of the flagging originally from 2018, and so I know how extensive this parcel is as far as wetlands are concerned. So I know it's a very challenging site to get flagged correctly. So I do appreciate the efforts involved here. Any comments from the commission? Questions?
We're going to get a little more on this with then coming back, or no?
So I expected what's going to happen is once the ANRAD is issued, I think there's some questions Jennifer had to clarify a couple of things related to the ANRAD itself. But once the ANRAD gets issued, that I believe that they'll probably continue on with the planning stages of the property.
Okay.
So we'll get a whole separate filing for that.
Okay. No, I'm good with everything for right now then. Thank you.
Nate, Al, you good? Any public comment for 524 Depot Street? You can raise your hand or put a question in the Q&A box. I can recognize you. Just give me 5 more seconds here. So seeing none, given that we've we've got some open items here. We'll continue until our next meeting on July 10th. Is that correct? Greg?
Yes.
No? I just want to make sure the applicant's in agreement that that's what we're doing.
Yes.
Okay. Motion to continue 524 Depot Street to July 10th.
Spady, second.
Callfell Spady is second. Roll call vote.
Benson, I.
Crossman, aye.
Spady, aye.
Callfell's aye. Okay, we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is a continued hearing for 518 Washington Street. They've actually asked for another continuance. So I need a motion to continue 518 Washington to July 10th.
Spady, second.
Callfell Spady is second. Roll call vote.
Benson, I.
Crossman, aye.
Spady, aye.
Callfell's aye. I did try, Jennifer.
That's good. It's all good.
560 Foundry Street. This is a request for modifications. This is regarding the geothermal wells originally. And I believe there's some other additional information I want to present tonight as well. Lori, you're up.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can't see you though.
Okay, just turning on my video now. Oh,
There you go.
How are you?
Hello.
My name's Lori McDonald. I'm with Conoco Engineers and Scientists, and I'm representing the applicant, Sawmill Village LLC, for this request for an amended order of conditions. So I guess I should start where we left off. Last time we met, we had shown you the locations of the geothermal wells. And since that time, we've finalized our bridge plans. We've amended our bridge design. So we've also submitted a revised bridge set last week to be included with this request for an amended order of conditions. I know those plans were submitted rather late, so I'm not sure if now is the correct time to discuss those designs. But I can start right now by discussing the changes that were made to the geothermal wells. So
Lori, I would do the geothermal wells and then have them have their decision. And then if you want to present the bridge, do that afterward, please.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, you can share your screen, Lori.
Okay. Okay, so you should see the plans at this point.
Yes.
And now I'm going to switch over to the revised geothermal wells. So the commission had asked for us to relocate the wells as much as possible away from resource areas, and that has been completed. We've relocated them to the street side of the residences where possible. These blue dots are the locations of the wells and the connections which have been added to the plans to the each individual residence. So we've also added at each resident location the proposed dewatering basin. So when these wells are being drilled, there will be a dewatering basin adjacent to the well location, and any water encountered during the drilling process will be discharged to a detention basin right in the same location as the well drilling. The pipes are going to be connected to the homes. We have a approximate location of each of these wells connected to the buildings. The size of the pipes are shown on the plans. And we're anticipating that the trenches connecting the well to the homes with the pipes will be about 24 to 36 inches deep and 8 inches wide. We are going to try to install the wells prior to the installation of the foundations as necessary. Work will be starting as soon as we can. Any of the non-natural materials encountered during the drilling process will be collected and disposed of off-site in accordance with local, state, and federal laws and regulations. As far as mechanical issues with these systems, we're not aware of any issues. These wells are going to be about 350 feet below ground, and they're going to be encased in a heat conducting grout or bentonite sand mix, which in addition to insulating the water in the tubing, it'll also protect the tubing from breakage. So these systems are because they're closed systems, there's pretty little failure, is my understanding, associated with them. There was a question about aquifers and the impacts to the aquifers. I looked at the mapping. The project area is not within the mapped aquifer according to Mass GIS. So we're not anticipating any impacts to the sole source aquifer or any medium or high yield aquifers. There was also a question about any continual testing on site for hazardous materials. And our LSP has been out to the site on a bi-weekly basis, inspecting soil piles and if there's been any noticeable odors coming from soils or the ground. He did do some visual and olfactory sampling, or he did find some potential evidence of contamination. We did submit a EPH sample to the lab for a quantitative analysis, but the results were below laboratory detection limits. So to this date, we haven't found any evidence of reportable hazardous material issues during construction. So again, these blue dots are the locations of the wells, the detention basin, and the connection to each of the structures on the east side of Beaver Brook. So this is Beaver Brook right here. It's flowing under Foundry Street southward to the new wetland replication area B. This is Foundry Street up here. This is the north arrow. 24 is over here. So this is phase 1, which is currently under construction. We did provide also this detail showing the actual closed loop geothermal well system, how it's going to be installed and what it'll generally look like when it's underground. So I'll go to the west side of Beaver Brook. And basically it's the same situation. Here's Beaver Brook right here. This is Foundry Street right up here. Old Pond is on the other side of Foundry Street. This is Mulberry Brook right here, flowing from west to east. And this is Vernal Pool E, Vernal Pool A, Wetland A. And each of these blue dots are the locations of the geothermal wells and the connections and detention basins. The blue line is riverfront area. Red line is the 50-foot no touch zone. The yellow line is the 100-foot buffer. And the purple line here is vernal pool habitat, or the local definition of a vernal pool. So at this point, Jennifer, I should turn it back over to Rory.
Yes.
Thank you. Jennifer, just as a point of information, have we seen the LSP reports or logs or any inspection logs that might be available?
I don't believe they've been submitted.
So are they?
I know you mentioned them.
are they meant to be submitted to us on a periodic basis?
I don't recall anything in the order.
It's not specifically in the order that way. It's just that they would have somebody who would be on-site reporting and monitoring it.
So we only to be notified if they find something problematic?
Correct.
I think maybe next time we write that a little bit differently.
Yes.
Jennifer, any comments?
Just one that from the May 22nd meeting, you continued for the final locations from the Board of Health. So I'm assuming that's what this plan is, the final location from the Board of Health.
Yes, the health has approved the plan.
Okay. Potential for leaks, detail of the system, construction sequence, and the LSP monitoring of the contaminated soil potential. And those are all things that Lori has addressed at the meeting and in their packet.
Okay. I have no further questions. Anybody on the commission have a question?
None for me, I'm good.
Any public comment for 560 Foundry Street, the request for modification related to the geothermal wells? So seeing none, can we just vote? Do we just have to close discussion on this part and then talk about the other one, or just should we vote on this? I'm just trying
I
to.
think you can vote on this. I couldn't think of any conditions that you would need to add.
Right.
The order and the permit for work, but if you have something.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I think maybe should we simply condition that they have to have the dewatering pits located near their drill, or just leave it be?
It's the dewatering pits are on the plan.
Okay.
And so typically I would write a follow-up letter that says you provided revised plans with the date, what they say.
I'm good. We don't need to repeat ourselves 4 times to get the point across. We're good. So I would make a motion to approve the request for modifications related to the geothermal wells for 560 Foundry Street.
Second.
Caulfield's Benson second. Roll call vote.
Benson, I.
Crossman, aye.
Spady, aye.
Caulfield's aye. So now that that's out of the way, let's bifurcate this, right? So as I understand it, just to be, so we can set the stage here, Jennifer, have you had much of a chance to look at the plans that were submitted last Tuesday?
No.
Right. So Lori, I don't know if you want to give us what you guys are planning, so it'll make it easier for us next time around, and plus give Jennifer some context as well.
Sure.
I think it probably is the best way to go about this, and then we can maybe even ask some questions about, preliminarily ask some questions about where we might be going with this change on the bridge design.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm going to share my screen again, if that's okay.
Great.
Okay, so originally we were planning on constructing a conspan bridge, basically a pre-constructed concrete bridge over Beaver Brook, connecting the west side to the east side. And since that time, we changed the bridge design to be more cost effective. And at this point, we're proposing a bridge core arch bridge with architectural block walls founded on precast concrete spread footings. Because of the change, the footings are about 10 feet deeper and larger than the original footings for the original structure. So this is the bridge location here, and this dark shaded area right in through here is the footprint of the footings themselves. The footing footprints stay within the limits of work. There's no change in this particular case. However, I get to, oh, can't see my, it must be here, hold on. However, because of the shape, I don't know if you can see this. This is one of the, let me zoom in a little bit. So this is the southern crossing elevation. And you can see the original shape of the bridge was, you know, further out. The footings are basically within the same footprint of the roadway. They're deeper, they're larger. The only impact difference is the impacts to floodplain. The shape of the bridge is going to impact some floodplain within the limits of Beaver Brook. And let me find that. So right here is the sketch of the actual changes to the floodplain elevations. So the proposed arching impact of floodplain elevations 103 to 130, 103.5 is this cyan color. There's changes between 102 and 103 in this orange area, and then you see elevation changes or impact changes from elevation 101 to 102 in this magenta area, and then there'll be impact changes from 100 to 103.5 in this green area. So let me see. I'm gonna find that one. If you just give me a second. So as far as actual changes, there's going to be like a 42 cubic foot increase at that 100 to 101 elevation, 188 cubic feet increase at the 101 to 102 elevation, a 394 increase in the 102 to 103 elevation, and then a 213 cubic foot increase in impacts between 103 and 104. And basically, we've decided to mitigate those impacts right at wetland replacement area A. If I can find, that's the wrong thing. So all the additional impacts to floodplain will be mitigated in wetland replacement area A by expanding the mitigation area at the overflow from the stormwater basin. So this is the riprap slope that accepts discharge water from the stormwater system. And we've increased the size of wetland mitigation area A by expanding it out to the west into this riprap slope to get our additional storage needed. And we've proposed to add 14 Clethra alnifolia sweet pepper bush in this area to keep it vegetated. So although there is a slight increase in flood impacts, we are mitigating for those impacts. The footings, again, just like the original footings, when they're constructed, the contractor will excavate down and dewater within the limits of the footings. They'll dewater to an upland area away from the resource area. There'll be no actual impacts to bank at all. all the excavation will remain upslope away from the stream bank. Let's see, I just wanted to show you some pictures of what this bridge structure is going to look like. This is an example. So here are the footings right in through here. This is the bridge core. It's a metal structure, and what they do, they'll construct the footings, they'll install the arch, and then they'll backfill and construct the walls at the same time till they reach the subgrade elevation of the road. Then they'll install their utilities and finish constructing the road. So this is a good photo of what the construction will look like close to completion. And then this is an example of what the bridge will look like if you're looking at it from the stream. So I have the designer who was unable to attend tonight. I didn't think we'd really get into too much detail at this point because we're so late with our submission. But at the next hearing, I'll plan on having our designer present to address any more specific questions the commission may have on the design. So I don't know if I was clear, Jennifer, Rory, but I hope I did provide some clarity.
Yeah, I mean, I think you did give us a good idea of what the changes are being proposed. I mean, I think there's some details here that we'll probably want to get into it at some point. And Jennifer, I don't know if you had any specific questions before I dive in with a couple of my own.
I do, yeah, two kind of quick ones. Lori, did you provide a compliance statement with your with the request? One, just how does it meet BLSF performance standards under the bylaw and under Wetland Protection Act?
I don't think I did, no, but I can put one together.
Okay, so I think I'm curious about how does BLSF get into the basin, into the wetland replication area from the floodplain? Where's the unrestricted hydrologic connection? I show that on one of your plans.
Yeah, sorry. So the connection is here.
Yep.
I don't know if you can see this with me. So the connection is this green line. This connects out to Beaver Brook. There's the bank flags of Beaver Brook. So the connection is at
Okay.
100 to 101.
And that small channel is adequate to get that much water into the area? I know you've looked at it before, but
yeah, my understanding is yes. I'd have to defer to the engineer, but my understanding is it's sufficient enough to accept water up to elevation 103, 104. So, but I can confirm with the engineer.
So the blue is the proposed 100-year floodplain.
Correct, yeah.
And does it show on there where the existing floodplain is? It's the is it the 103 in that area too, or is it shorter?
I don't want to, let's see, I don't think she's showing it here.
Okay.
I think it's this dashed blue line. This was the original. limits of the flood storage, and it's been increased to this dark blue line in this area right here, but I'd have to confirm that with the engineer.
Okay, it may be in your packet. I just didn't get to look at it. But thank you. That's the only question I have at the moment.
So I think that from my perspective, just a couple of questions. One is, do we have anything that compares the durability of the previous design versus the durability of the new design? Like how long should we expect the new bridge design to last before it needs to be replaced or repaired versus what the previous proposed construction was?
So
And you may not have that answer, Lori, and I you know, so.
yeah. Hold on, let me.
And I'm happy to have you take that back to somebody who might know the answer.
So a lot of it's going to depend on weather in the area and whether the system is underwater. In this case, it's not. I've seen like, I guess, evidence that these systems last anywhere from 25 to 70 years. But I can get you more information on that. I'm looking for correspondence.
And I guess, how does that compare to what the previous design was?
I'm not quite sure what the previous design was. So I see, my information says design life for the materials is 30 years. The actual lifespan from data ranges from 25 to 70 years, depending on the scenario. The archway isn't going to be underwater, so it should last longer. Towards the longer limits of the lifespan. And a lot of it's going to.
So the part of the reason why I'm actually asking that question is understanding that this is the sole method of ingress and egress to that western portion, right? And
Yes.
So I'm just trying to make sure that when, you know, that if it needs to get replaced, when it needs to get replaced, that it's, you know, some reasonable amount of time that isn't totally disruptive to the homeowners on the western side of the property. So, but you know, I'm not, you know, listen, that's not going to happen in my lifetime. So, but at the same time, I have to be sort of prudent in our approach to this. So that's the nature of the questions we get on this, Lori. So, and I know we may not have the answers, but it is something I think we should probably have a discussion about to make sure we're aware of what those changes might be. Maybe the other one was only 30 years. I don't know. So, and the second question is there was a FEMA LOMAR that was done on this property. As part of this, it was probably what took the longest portion of this entire design. Is this impacting that LOMAR at all?
I would have to defer to the engineer. I don't have the answer to that question.
Okay. So I think that's probably a question that we spent, I think probably the most amount of time, as much time as we spent on wildlife on this piece of property, we probably spent as much time on floodplain analysis. So I just want to make sure that we're not disturbing or that it's adequately accounted for in the LOMAR. So I just want everything to continue to go smoothly with that particular process. So I'm just keeping an eye out for all of us as it relates to that. So I think those are my two questions that I came up with. Anybody else have questions from the commission?
Yes, are there any other benefits to the change in bridge design that may support your decision besides money?
Not that I have an answer for, no. And know we will still meet the stream crossing standards. That was one concern. We wanted to make sure that wildlife would still be able to use the underneath the bridge for passage. So we still do meet those standards, but it was purely a cost issue, is my understanding.
Okay.
But it looked like from the detail that you showed us, it might actually be a little bit wider, so allowing more. Is that openness ratio a little bit bigger? Maybe.
I have to go back and look.
Yeah, where's that? The one that showed the two crossings together, or right there? You go right by it. Yep.
Oh, okay, yep, there we go. So this is the proposed, so it's a little bit
Oh, it's a little the
little
opposite way.
smaller, but we still meet the standards.
We're trying to help Lori.
Yeah.
Anything else, Nate or Mike?
No questions.
None for me. I'm good.
Anything else tonight, Lori? We'll leave it for you and Jennifer to sort of meet back up
Okay.
once she can pull the file again.
Right.
Any public comment on 560 Foundry Street? Okay, so seeing none, so we'll continue this particular request for modifications related to the change in bridge design until July 10th. Enough, Jennifer, for now?
Yeah.
Okay, so until July 10th, 2023. Need a
All right,
second?
great.
Spady second.
Caulfield, Spady, a second. Roll call vote.
Benson, aye.
Crossman, aye.
Spady aye.
Caulfield's aye. Okay, Lori, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Next up is a certificate of compliance for 24 Union Street.
It doesn't look like anybody's here for that, but the certificate of compliance is ready to be issued for a full.
Anybody have any questions?
None.
Any public comment, 24 Union Street? Seeing none, make a motion to issue a certificate of compliance for 24 Union Street.
Spady second.
Caulfield, Spady, a second. Roll call vote.
Benson, aye.
Crossman, aye.
Spady aye.
Caulfield's aye. Next up is a certificate of compliance for 105 Washington Street. This is a septic system.
So the vegetation is mostly stabilized, but I did have one question for them in the staff report, and it was basically a portion of the wetland was being mowed, and they were to put their marker further out so that it would stop being mowed. The marker was in the old spot, so they were supposed to change that. And I don't think I heard back from them yet if they did that. I would postpone that to the next meeting.
Any disagreement from the commission? I'm in favor of continuing.
Nope. Yes, sir.
Okay, so any public comment, 105 Washington Street? Seeing none, make a motion to continue 105 Washington Street until July 10th.
Spady second.
Caulfield, Spady, a second. Roll call vote.
Benson, aye.
Crossman, aye.
Spady aye.
Caulfield's aye. Next up is, make sure I'm looking at the right thing here, 520 Foundry Street. This was this request for certificate of compliance that was continued previously. We're going to continue it again till July 10th. Motion to continue 520 Foundry to July 10th. Caulfield, Benson. Caulfield, Benson, second. Roll call vote.
Benson, aye.
Crossman, aye.
Spady aye.
Caulfield's aye. Next up is 345 Center Street. This was a continued request for a partial certificate of compliance for Lot 1 only for Goodspeed Lane. I don't know.
We got a late request this afternoon for a continuance to the 7:10 meeting. It'd be a big meeting.
Oh, I'm thinking I'm busy that night. Okay, continue at the applicants. Well, is there any public comment for 345 Center Street? Okay, just making sure nobody's not here. So 345 Center Street continued to July 10th.
Spady, second.
Roll call, Caulfield's.
Benson,
Roll
aye.
call vote.
Grossman, aye.
Spady, aye.
Caulfield's aye. Just for the record, I did submit my Mullins on 345 Center Street. So, 350 Foundry Street. This is a request for certificate of compliance for a septic system. Jennifer,
Yeah, that's ready to be issued.
any questions from the commission? Seeing none, any public comment? 350 Foundry. Seeing none, make a motion to issue certificate of compliance for 350 Foundry Street.
Benson, second.
Caulfield's Benson, second. Roll call vote.
Benson, aye.
Grossman, aye.
Spady, aye.
Caulfield's aye. Next up is enforcement discussion on 153 Bay Road.
Just notification, we received a call that people at 153 Bay Road had cut and cleared and graded the area that's supposed to be the buffer and protected area for a cluster subdivision. So I met with the homeowners. We did mark out the roughly property lines based on their plan, and they're hiring a surveyor to make sure they have the correct location, and then we'll meet again on how to restore that.
Okay. Any questions? Next up is wetland regulations, potential update.
So I'm going to bring Lauren up. Lauren has a presentation for us. Hi, Lauren.
Hello. So I'm gonna share my screen. I have a PowerPoint prepared.
So just for the public record, Lauren Berardi is the intern this year. So I just wanted to get that on the public record. Thank you for all your hard work, Lauren.
Thank you.
There you go.
Sorry. Okay. So my presentation is on the Wetlands Protection Act and climate change. So a simple definition of climate change is mainly due to increasing greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. The climate is changing, and that's impacting our weather patterns, temperatures, ecosystems, etc. And the Wetlands Protection Act, it plays an important role in mitigating and adapting to climate change, and that's because of regulations. And that can just help a place become more climate resilient and adaptive. So our climate is changing. Our climate is changing in Massachusetts, and the prediction is that temperatures will continue to rise. That's a fact that temperatures are rising right now. And it's likely that hot days will feel 22% hotter by 2070 than in 2013. 81 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's for hot days. And by 2070, it's likely to get to 99 degrees Fahrenheit for hot days. There are certain impact sectors that Climate Change Assessment Report Volume 1 has identified, and that could impact humans, infrastructure, the natural environment, governance, and economy. As you can see, there are graphs, and basically you can see that the average temperature is rising, and it's predicted that it will continue to rise through to the end of the century. And same with days with maximum temperature over 90 degrees. Those are also continue to become more frequent each year. And there are fewer days each year that are below zero. So that's actually decreasing, which is also a sign of climate change. Okay, so there are certain main climate concerns in Massachusetts as a whole. So the Climate Change Assessment Report, Volume 1, identified 37 different climate change impacts in Massachusetts. However, there are 5 priority impacts across the state. The first one being damage to electric transmission and distribution of infrastructure. And this is just due to extreme heat and extreme events like storms and the wind that comes from those storms. There's also freshwater ecosystem degradation, and that's due to warming waters, more drought, and increased runoff from more intense storms. There's also a reduction in availability of affordable housing, and that's due to damage and scarcity from increased demand and damage from storms and flooding. There's also an increased demand for state and municipal government services. And that's like, for example, that's emergency response, food assistance, state-sponsored healthcare. There's also increasing costs of responding to climate change, and that's basically planning for abrupt changes in local population. For climate change in Eastern or Eastern Inland region, the municipal, sorry.
No, just helping you out.
Yeah, vulnerability preparedness and community resilience building workshop that was held in 2018 found that climate change is causing extreme temperatures, as you can see in the image. Number of days over 90 degrees Fahrenheit is increasing each year. So it's expected by 2050 there will be 25 days above 90 each year, and then by 2090 there's going to be about 55 days over 90 each year, when historically 1950 to 2013 there was only 4. For extreme storms, that's due to that's flooding and wind, like explained previously. And then there's also this flood drought cycle that we are seeing in this region. And that's the flood is mainly due to more intense storms, but it's also usually followed by a period of no precipitation or a dry cycle. So main climate concerns in Easton or the main Eastern inland region is reduced food security and safety. And this is due to increasing temperatures and power outages that can cause spoiled food, and food is also becoming more limited through distribution to supply. So basically, food costs are expected to increase over the next century. And there's increased vector-borne diseases and bacterial infections. And that's due to the increasing temperatures, and that's making the environment more favorable to mosquitoes and ticks that can transmit diseases. Here in this graph, I got from MassGov, and they do a monthly tick-borne disease report, and you can just see that there's usually a spike during the summer months. So that's something to keep in mind. And the reduced food safety and the increased vector-borne disease, I got that information from the Climate Change Assessment Report, Volume 3. So mitigation to climate change through the Wetlands Protection Act for extreme temperatures, mainly regulations that support cooling and shading, and that can be in buffer zones to help mitigate those temperatures. For extreme storms, it's important that the most recent data for stormwater management and just plan for the more intense storms in the regulations is important to help become more climate adaptive. And for the flood drought cycle, Easton, I believe, already has a water ban, but water bans are super important for the drought side of it, and buffer zones are actually super important. So if the water ends up coming above a line that's expected, the buffer zone will help mitigate that and prevent storm damage to infrastructure. So addressing climate concerns. So the vector-borne disease and bacterial infections, basically educate about common tick and mosquito diseases, so Lyme disease, West Nile virus, Triple E, and how to protect yourself and become familiar with these diseases is actually really important to trying to mitigate those concerns. Also for food safety and security, expand the agricultural community and their resources, and that was discussed in the MVP and the MVP workshop in 2018. So other towns' projects for being climate smart. This was found in Climate Change Assessment Report, Volume 3. Norwood is working towards a flood prevention and stream restoration. It was at risk for failing due to climate change with major storms. And so they removed the dam and restored the brook and natural flow, and that reduced the flood risk that it had before. Oxbridge integrated a vector-borne disease control program, and that looked at alternatives for aerial spraying through biological control like predators, and they are monitoring that. They also have a public education campaign on preventing mosquito-transmitted diseases and climate change. This is a picture of the brook that has been restored. So other towns' regulations in being climate smart. The town of Millis, they have regulations of storage of fill So it's not in the buffer zone and it's surrounded by hay bales and that prevents erosion off of the fill that might be stored on the property during a construction period. They also require 1.5 times the wetland being altered needs to be replaced or restored. So it basically tries to combat any damage they're doing to the wetland. Now, the town of Arlington has climate resilience a part of their regulations, and they have a whole section on it, but they follow the FEMA 100-year flood evaluation. And they also have a 2-to-1 compensatory flood storage replacement and a 2-to-1 tree replacement / planting. So for every tree that's cut down, 2 needs to be planted, for an example. Suggested regulations to help Easton's climate resilience. Wetlands or surrounded buffer zones being altered. Basically, I suggest we should replace / restore more land that was altered. This is due because freshwater degradation is an environmental concern. Invasives are can take away from a resource area's resilience, taking up nutrients, taking away shading and cooling. I say invasives must be either rooted or treated during a duration of a permit. And then stormwater, use more recent rainfall data to calculate stormwater damage and possibly calculate FEMA 100 and 500-year flood evaluation. This is because storm intensity and floods are expected to increase, and we just want to be climate adaptive and prepared for that. So what we have in our bylaw regulations that is good. So the wetland values that are protected under our bylaw and the Wetlands Protection Act work in favor for mitigating and adapting to climate change. For example, our buffer zones of 100 feet for resource areas and 200 feet for streams and rivers. That mitigates climate change through filtering water and providing cooling and shade for our resource areas, which is essential to the mitigating degradation to freshwater ecosystems. Regulating land subject to flooding, that just is being adaptive to more intense floods. I think we're really good with making sure our land subject to flooding is not being altered. And area of critical environmental concern, so our ACEC. So that restricted area, that's a restricted area that protects carbon sinks. So basically, they store and take up more carbon than is being released by them. So that's like our wetlands, our rivers and streams, all that stuff. And that helps mitigate climate change as climate change is happening due to increasing greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So that is all I have. Does anybody have any questions?
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good. You know, I truly appreciate this, Lauren, because we actually started this conversation probably about 3 years ago when we started talking about trying to adapt our regulations without even changing the bylaws. How could we adapt them to take into climate change as a wetland resource, right? Climate resiliency as a wetland resource, which I think that you've outlined very clearly here what the benefits of doing so are. You know, it's very interesting to me that a town such as Arlington is actually a leader in this area. They were actually one of the first towns in the state if not the first. I think they were the first to adapt their regulations to account for climate resiliency. I would say that probably if someone had to ask me what was the first town to implement regulations that were adapted to climate change, Arlington probably would not be in your top 10. But I really give Arlington a lot of credit, and they've got some great leadership there on the conservation side of things. And you know, I think that one of the things you've done here is point us to other ways of adapting our own approach to wetland resource management to protect what we do have in this town. Obviously, we value a lot of what we do. We've got 4,000 acres of protected conservation land, and one of the probably strongest bylaws and regulations in the state as far as protecting things. And you've shown us why that's important, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's not strictly about you know, the wetlands themselves, but the buffer zones and protecting those areas, and even just our forest areas and the carbon sinks that they end up being as well. You take a forest like that's over in Wheaton Farm, and the value that has, even though it's not wetlands. So I do appreciate it. So, and I really want to continue down this road as far as trying to find the best ways, even if we do it bit by bit, of increasing climate resiliency. Because I think that one of the challenges, as anybody who approaches regulation change, is that if you try and do it all, it takes too long, right? So I think you have to sort of great job.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from anybody? Thank you. I shouldn't just rewrite all the regulations, we'll be all set.
Yeah. It's going to take a while to rewrite those.
That's for sure. We've been talking about that for a long time too. And then of course the pandemic happened. That's what really sort of got us off our game a little bit. So
Yeah.
but we're starting to get back. So I appreciate it. Okay. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Next up is to the meeting minutes for 6/5. I don't know if anybody had a chance to review them. Willing to accept them. Someone wants to make a motion.
Motion to accept the minutes for meeting 6/5.
Benson second.
Spadia, Benson second. Roll call vote.
Benson, aye.
Crossman, aye.
Spadia.
Paul Fells, aye. Chair updates. I actually don't have any. I will say I'll say one thing. One is at our next meeting we'll do a standard reorganization item where we'll elect chair and vice chair, as well as representatives to any boards, the CPC, certainly CPC representatives. So there are two of us up for reappointment. It probably was done at some point here soon. It happened tonight at the select board meeting. So both Ben and my term expires on June 30th. So if we get reappointed, you'll see us again on July 10th. And then we can reorganize the board as necessary. Okay? Environmental plan?
Thank you both for staying on.
Let's hope.
Yeah, so for planner update, I just wanted to take a look at the two signs. I think I can share my screen. Perhaps not. Are you seeing the PDF or still looking at my list of files?
List.
Seeing your list of files.
Okay. I'm gonna stop. I don't know why it makes me do this twice, but let me know if you see it this time.
Yep.
Okay. So the top sign is the new sign from the wayfinding project and the committee. The bottom sign are your standard signs that we were about to order. And then we found out we really are supposed to have all of the conservation signs too, looking like this. Originally, it was sort of explained to me that it was, or I thought it was explained that it's really all the buildings were doing that. I didn't realize it was conservation property as well. So we can ask the sign company to do sort of a mix. You know, it'll have the logo, it'll have this sort of design feature, but will include the regular information that you have on your signs already with the acres and when it was acquired or any other text to that, if you're all okay with that.
So, having spent time on the wayfinding committee, I don't have a problem changing our sign design, except that it'll take us 50 years to change them all. The one thing I think that we should probably agree to is, you know, something like the town forest sign that's there that has 74 acres and when it was acquired or something like that is fine. I think that there are some signs, like if you go to Clifford Grant, there's like a paragraph, right? And I think that we probably are going to have to decide whether or not we really want to have that lengthy historical description of what might be going on with that piece of property. I love the fact these people that walk up can sort of understand how we came to get that information. There's also one over near my house. I'm trying to think which one it is. The name of the piece of property, but it talks about, you know, wood nymphs and all this other stuff. Like just
That's been there for so long. What street is that off of?
it's in Mill
Everyone in
Street.
high school has had to drive by that.
Yeah, Mill Street. It's on Mill
Yeah,
Street.
there you go.
Yeah. So I don't know if we could probably do away with that story. You know, it's like
That's a classic.
I know, but it takes up like 3/4 of the sign. It's just so I might suggest.
Go ahead.
I would just might suggest that we maybe try and decide what we want to include of the existing sign.
So it could be something as simple as do what they have in the top picture, and then on a kiosk, do another sign with all of the information in the full paragraphs.
Right.
You could do it that way so that I know they wanted all the signs to look consistent, so it was a recognizable sign. That sign alone is going to be $4,000.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not cheap. But having, you know, scouts build a kiosk and then designing, you know, a metal sign that'll go on the kiosk with all the rest of the information that's been on the signs historically is a way to preserve both and sort of mix the two together without ruffling any feathers.
So anybody else have comments?
I dig that. That's kind of actually honestly what I was going to suggest. Just put a kiosk with some type of placard of that old historical. Plus,
Yeah,
it's kind of what needs to read stuff anyways at a trailhead. You know what I mean? So kind of fitting.
Who's responsible for the signs? I think I missed that one.
On conservation property, we are.
No. I mean, like the signs in general that have just been popping up all over the place. Like, what organization is doing the sign project? Town of Easton.
I think it's through the planning department. That was planning and DPW.
I think there was a grant associated with this initial set of signs.
I need to write a letter to someone. They have militia park in an uproar because they call it militia field.
Don't worry, that's already been complained about there.
Duly noted.
You can write your letter. I can assure you are not the first.
No, I don't need to write another one. I'm good.
So I mean, I think that I think we need to support the change in signs, even if it's going to cost us more. So if we can have a conversation maybe later on about where this priority is now that we may not get as many done. So let's, I mean, I think that's the way to go, to be honest. I think that a uniformity, one of the issues with the whole wayfinding thing was to create a uniform look, right? So.
Okay, and so the bluebird picture, that's not something that we would try to put on the signs, correct? We're gonna put that on the kiosk and the, whatever sign we do for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you stick with the shovels and the compass. So,
I just wanted to check with you because I was about to say, yes, do them and sign the contract and,
perfect timing, Jennifer.
yep, luckily. The next one is a representative is needed for the Wheaton Farm barn. Someone from the CPC had asked just to meet with the chairperson, so maybe we just say, hey, Ben, you need to meet with the CPC chairperson and go over where we are with Wheaton Farm barn. So you were looking for proposals before for structural plans to make the building safe. COVID happens, we weren't getting any estimates in. We had this close to being signed, the contract, a month ago, but there was an issue with the amount of insurance the company wanted to pay versus what town of Easton's typical contracts require, and so that that just didn't happen. So we have 3 new people that we're looking at to provide an estimate. And so we're, they just want to have a meeting with someone from the Conservation Commission to go over, what are your intentions still to preserve this barn?
Ben's not here to say no.
And I mean, I said it was on your list of projects that you wanted to keep moving forward. So yes, you wanted to keep going with that, but if that's a discussion you need to have again, we can do that.
Yeah, so I propose that Ben meet with the head of the CPC.
Yep, there you go.
So it's not a surprise to Ben. I've already had a conversation, so it's not a surprise. But I would not. It's a funny thing to say, but I wouldn't do that.
No, he was a big proponent and spoke the most about Wheaton Farm anyway. That was his project to put on our list to make sure it kept going. So that makes sense.
Yep, and I think it's appropriate for CPC to ask us. They've allocated around $200,000. I know Al has the exact number, but it's somewhere around $200,000 to help us get the barn repaired. But to be quite honest, it's probably more. And I think the CPC is probably just looking for, are you going to spend this money? When are you going to do it? How much do you really need to do it? Before we go down this road. And that's a fine conversation to have. So I think we just need to have it.
It's one of the older grants, so there's an interest in, if we're not going to do it, then we should think of returning the money and closing the grant out.
It isn't about the not wanting to do it. It was literally, we have probably tried to get the design done and spend that initial $20,000, $25,000, whatever it was. We probably tried 5 or 6 times to try and get a bid for somebody to do the design work. In order to get it bid out, we need to get the design work done first. So it's not through lack of effort for sure, or lack of desire. But I agree that we've got to make a decision.
That's it for me.
Okay. Given that, we need to vote whether to go into executive session. So I make a motion to enter executive session per General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21(6), to discuss strategy with respect to the potential purchase and value of land located at 57R Randall Street, Map 25U, Parcel 58. We do not have the intention of returning to regular session. So this will be the end of regular session, and we will exit executive session to adjourn. So I need.
But I recommend that we take 5 minutes between the meetings.
Good idea. So it's 7:55. So we will begin the executive session at 8:00 PM. I need a second to my motion, and we'll roll.
Crossman second.
Caulfield's Crossman second, roll call.
Benson, I.
Crossman, aye.
Spadia.
Caulfield's aye, 4-0 to go to executive session. We'll see you at 8:00.
Yeah.
You guys all have a separate link to that, okay?
Separate link, and then just a quick question for Michelle, is that Zoom room 2 or 3? You know? Sign into both and we'll figure it out, so.
It says Zoom 2 in the invite,
Okay.
so, okay?
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
See you in a minute.